Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I've got another little project here on the JCB Mini CX backhoe loader. I've got a repair that this thing has needed pretty much since I've owned the thing, and I hadn't gotten around to doing it because to get to this, get really good access to this area here to work on this, you're going to take off this whole front thing that I took off, which is this beefy thing right here. But what happened the other day was I was loading some stuff into a dumpster, and I clipped the corner of the dumpster and ended up bending this side in, which made the whole thing move back and actually put enough pressure on the fan assembly to push the shroud back to where the shroud was lightly touching the fan. Didn't end up damaging the cooler or the radiator or anything. That thing is pretty beefy, so it took the brunt of the damage. So I've got to bend that back anyways, but in order to fix that I had to take it off, and then when I took it off I realized now's the perfect time for me to address another issue that I've been dealing with. And the issue I'm referring to is a bad connection at the battery. Now this isn't the original battery. When I got the machine, the battery that was in here was pretty old. So I had this Napa Legend battery and decided to use this on the machine. And what I discovered was when I went to take the battery clamp off, the bolts were really rusted and one snapped off. And I wanted to get the machine back to work fairly quickly, so what I ended up doing was I ended up having to clamp on the battery post like so, and using this set of vice grips and clamping it down to create a tight enough connection so that I could continue to start the machine and use it. I've been dealing with it like that pretty much all summer long, and now we're into fall. So long that these vice grips actually started out life not being all rusty like this. Well, they probably weren't mint, but you know, they weren't this bad. So now that I have this really good access because this assembly is off, and the assembly is not the easiest thing to get off. So the reason why I have a real, well, hate's probably a strong word, but I really just don't understand JCB engineers. Every time I've gone to work on something on this machine, or almost every time, it seems like there's something that's hard to, there's fasteners that are difficult to get at. There's assemblies that have to be removed just to get to what you want to get to. I mean, it's more like a modern, like you hear automotive mechanics complain a lot about a lot of modern cars, where you got situations where you got to do crazy things just to, you know, change a sensor or whatever. So case in point, you got to get to these bolts that hold, 4 large bolts that hold this in, right? The problem is there are nuts on the bottom, so you've got to get a wrench on the bottom, and there's very little room to work in here when this frame is on here, but of course the frame doesn't come off if the bolts are in, right? So it's kind of a catch-22. What I ended up doing was I ended up being able to work my way through a hole in the bottom here with a long extension and put a socket on the bottom of the on the nuts on the bottom, and then get a gear wrench on the top, and slowly but surely was able to, between the two of them, unbolt the 3 of them. 3 of them are large bolts, and then there's one small one in this front corner which holds this plate in position here, which holds this fuse assembly, this main system fuse, a big sucker, okay, in place, and that is all right here in your way of the battery clamp, the battery post connection and everything. So again, another reason why you really need to get this out to work on this. And this was the hardest bolt, even though it was the smallest one. It's the hardest one to get to because of the way that this is in here. So now let's talk about the strange design of JCB battery clamps at the end of the battery cables. I've never seen anything like this before. I don't know if this is unique to JCB or if this is some kind of a European thing, because JCBs are very popular over in, I think,
China.
Europe and Asia,
China,
like India, Pakistan, I see, because it's like if you look for videos on how to work on these things on YouTube, most of the guys that are putting videos up working on these things, they don't look anything like I do, and they are not speaking a language I understand.
it's China to me.
All right, I apologize for the strange camera angle, but I want to give you a good view of this. So this is the clamp for the negative terminal. This one I was able to get loose, and it actually still works. So the weird thing about the design of this is not a nut. So, you know, you would expect a bolt going through with a nut, but what they're doing here is they're using this special connector on the end here as the actual nut. It's got a socket with threads in it that this bolt threads into. So I'm going to take this bolt out just to show you. See all the corrosion falling out of there? Okay, that if we, now with that bolt out, if I twist this, and actually that one doesn't want to come out. So let me show you the one that I took apart because it broke. This is the positive one, all right? So the positive one is identical, except that it has this extra boss on it with a threaded hole so that we can put a bolt in here to connect the two little auxiliary lines for power. You can see the hole on the side here. Well, you might not be able to see it, but this is tapered. So what we end up with is, if this were to come off of here, we would see a tapered post on this side. Let me grab the positive lead here. So this little post right here is tapered, and that is made to go right in here like this. And then what they do is you have the bolt goes in on this side, okay, and threads into a hole on the end of this. Well, you notice there's no hole on this one. That's because that's the bolt snapped off. So that's the problem with these. Once this bolt snaps off inside there, I've got nothing left to grab onto to try and even if I wanted to try and heat this up to take this out, I've got nothing left to grab onto there. So my first thought was, oh, no problem. I didn't know how these were put together. So before I even took this all apart and learned how this was put together, I thought, well, it's just a clamp that probably just solders onto the end of the cable. I thought this was cable right here, and then I'm just going to be able to cut this off, scrape off the, cut back some insulation, and use one of these handy dandy repair clamps you get at the auto parts store. These are $8 now at the Napa. They've gone up quite a bit. The problem I now realize is, once I got this apart, is that this right here underneath this plastic sheathing is not the battery cable. I was wondering why it felt so stiff. It's because if I pull this back, you can see it's a solid stem that's got a 90-degree bend in it. That if I pull this all the way back, you can see it transitions and crimps onto the cable way back here. So if I want, I can cut this off way back here, trim back the insulation, put this on, but then I'm worried about whether or not that's going to not be enough play in the cable. It looks like maybe it would, but what I noticed was this nice clean metal area right here seems like it would be a great place for me to clamp this style cable onto. The problem is right now that if I want to put this in, this tapered post part, which I don't want to clamp onto because it's tapered, okay, so if I clamp like this onto here like this, that's no good because this has got a taper to it. If I want to get this part to seat in here, this is in the way. But since this is junk anyways, I'm not going to be able to get that up. I mean, I could, if I wanted to go through the trouble, I could undo the other end of this cable, take the whole cable out, put it in my milling machine vise, and I could drill out this bolt and retap it. But it's just not worth that much effort to me. And I guarantee you, like, JCB probably doesn't even sell this connector. They probably sell this cable as an assembly. And I shudder to think what this would cost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my cutoff wheel, I'm going to zip this off right here, cut this tapered section off of here, put this on here, clamp it down, and then I'll run the two I terminals for the lower power, these lower power connections right here. We're going to just zip these underneath here, and Bob's your uncle. Well, between the brass and the copper involved in building this cable, I'm sure it ain't cheap. All right. Ooh, that just barely is gonna fit. But it is gonna fit. That's gonna go like that. Now some of you guys might be thinking, hey Steve, isn't this positive terminal dangerously close to being able to ground out against here? You're absolutely right. The reason why that could potentially happen is because this battery has terminals on different sides. The terminals are swapped from the battery that came out of here. The battery that came out of here had the positive terminal on this side, so it would sit in with the terminals towards the rear over here, positive, negative. But since this is the only battery I had that would fit in here, that was a good battery, that's what I ended up putting in here. Oh, and the other great thing about this is the bolts for the hold down for the battery snapped right off when I went to take them out also. Those actually anchored down in the bottom plate here, so I'm not surprised at all. All the dirt that kind of sits down in there and traps moisture. It's no wonder that those rusted. And with this replacement being even kind of like clunkier and bulkier, it's even more precarious here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I get this battery moved back further back like this, and then I will put a board in here, just a block of wood that will keep, I'll be able to put a block of wood in here that won't go anywhere, and that will just keep this from being able to move forward. You know, if I put force on it into a pile or something like that, this won't be able to just kind of tilt forward and short out. I know, really kind of ham and egg stuff. I don't normally that would bother me, but all right, so I'm just going to clean that post up. I'm going to clean these terminals up. And yeah, the size of the holes on these terminals looks like it might be a little larger than these screws on here. So yeah, in an ideal world, I would like a better connection than that, but we'll live with it. So I was getting ready to button this back up, and I decided to go over and check the battery that I had taken out of here, the old interstate battery. I put it on the charger just for giggles, and I've got one of those testers that could put a load on the battery. So what I did was I load tested this battery, which I know is starting the tractor, and looked at what it was reading, and then compared it to the old battery, and the old battery actually seemed to have a little more juice than this one. So I'm going to put the old battery back in. I don't know if you guys are experiencing the same thing I am, but these newer batteries are not holding up well at all. So this is the old interstate battery that I took out of there. You can see it's like a lower profile, and it's actually got this lip on the bottom, which is what the clamps that the bolts broke off of actually used to grip onto to anchor this battery into the bottom, into the battery well there. But anyways, this battery, it's got a number E50FB, which according to what I read online means that this is either manufactured in May of 2005 or May of 2015. I know it's not 2005, so it must be 2015, which means this battery is now 10 years old. It was made in Germany, sold under the Interstate battery name, and I'm going to put it in and see if it starts, but right now it seems to be measuring as if it's going to have enough cranking amps to start this baby. This battery, which I took out of one of my trucks, is really a disappointment. This is a Napa Legend battery, okay, and I don't remember if this is a 24-month battery or what the deal was on this battery, but it was a Napa battery, so it wasn't exactly cheap. This has a date code of K2 on it, which is 2020, November of 2022, so almost 2023. It's only tail end of 2025, So it's a little over 3 years old, and this is complete junk. It will not take a charge no matter what I try. I tried putting the charger on the sulfate mode, or whatever you call it there. Tried, different chargers. This battery is just junk. It's measuring 12 volts, but as soon as you put a load on it, it goes right away. So that means it's got what's called a float charge on it. Also, by being able to use this battery again, I don't have to worry about putting a board in here because the posts are on the back side. And this can't really tilt back and show it out against anything because of this thing that sticks out here, this big boss that is welded to the frame. I did put a little bit of Never-Seez on the threads of these bolts and that bolt. Particularly that one there, I'm trying to keep from having to repeat this over on this side if I don't have to. Well, let's see if it starts. That battery's still a little low, I guess. Although this thing's always cranked slow ever since I've had it. No matter what I have in there for a battery. Oh, it's only 5:30 and it's already starting to get dark. Oh well. Hate it when the days start getting shorter like this. A lot less time to do things. But I was able to pound that frame back into relatively good shape, surprisingly enough. And I got the fuse box mounted. I think this was not in the right place when I got this machine. This sits here nicely now. So, anyways, and everything else is tightened up. Just gonna put the front grille on and go back to work. All right, guys. At this point, time for me to ask you to give this video a like if you haven't already done so, and if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing to the channel. You never know what I might get into next. Till next time, take care.